All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about Zoho. This is a story about a tech giant, a real powerhouse, that built this billion-dollar empire by basically breaking all the rules.
So you gotta ask, right? What's the secret sauce here? I mean, every tech success story seems to follow the same script. So how on earth do you build a global software giant from India, a place that back in the 90s was known for a totally different kind of tech?
Well, it turns out the answer is pretty simple. You take that playbook, the one from Silicon Valley, and you just toss it. Zoho's story is all about thinking differently, and it really boils down to one huge, fundamental decision they made right at the beginning.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're going back to the 1990s. The Indian IT industry is absolutely exploding, right? But it was all built on this one very specific and, yeah, very successful business model.
So you had this one dominant model, the services model. It was all about selling the time of Indian engineers. Think of it like being a contractor. But the founder, Sridhar Vembu, he saw something different. He was like, wait a minute, the real money, the real value, isn't in selling hours. It's in building and owning the thing itself, the intellectual property. And this whole motto was based on what's called labor arbitrage. It's a fancy term, but the idea is simple. You pay your engineers in rupees, but you bill your clients in dollars. Easy money, right? It was super profitable, low risk, but Vembu saw it as owning the clock, not the factory. And he wanted to own the factory. And this is the key takeaway here. When he started his company back in '96, it was called AdventNet, which would later become Zoho. He made this absolutely radical bet. He bet that India could do more than just sell its labor. It could actually create and export its own software products to the entire world. But, going against the grain is never easy, and this big idea of his was put to the test almost immediately. Right when they were getting started, bam, the entire tech industry just gets slammed by a huge crisis. So for the first few years, things were looking good for AdventNet. They were selling this niche software to big telecom companies. But then, 2001, the dot-com bubble bursts, and their customers, almost all of them, just vanished. This was a make or break moment. It forced them to completely reinvent themselves, and they saw this new thing coming up, software delivered online. And that's when, in 2005, they launched Zoho Writer. This was their very first software as a service product, or what we all now call SaaS. And you can really see just how huge this pivot was. They went from just a handful of massive, high-risk clients to millions of small businesses. They traded in those lumpy, unpredictable million-dollar checks for a steady, predictable stream of subscription money. And best of all, they built a product that basically sold itself. No more long sales cycles. It was all about simple self-service. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting. To make this new model work, Zoho made what is probably its most unconventional decision ever. They completely refused to take any outside money. None. You see, Sridhar Vembu just didn't trust the whole venture capital game. He felt that once you take that money, you're on their clock. The pressure is on for crazy growth and a quick payday, a quick exit. And he knew that would just kill his vision for the company, for the product, and for the culture. So he said, nope, not for us. He decided to bootstrap. And bootstrapping is exactly what it sounds like. You pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You only grow using the money you actually make from sales. That's it. No VCs, no investors. Now, you might think that's a huge disadvantage, right? But for Zoho, this limitation, it actually became their superpower. It forced them to get creative. And this is how they did it. This was their playbook, born out of necessity. They didn't have a giant marketing budget, so what'd they do? They used freemium models. Let the product be so good it sells itself. They couldn't afford to get into bidding wars for top graduates from elite colleges, so they just built their own talent pipeline, these Zoho schools. And they couldn't afford pricey offices in big cities. Fine. They moved to rural villages, which not only slashed costs, but also helped spread wealth. So, for years, Zoho just kept their heads down, using this unique playbook to quietly build app after app after app, dozens of them. And then they did something brilliant. They connected them all. And this was their masterstroke. Now, to really get why this was such a game changer, just think about this for a second. If you run a small business, what is the single biggest tech headache you have? I'll tell you what it is. It's app fatigue. It is a total nightmare. You're juggling, 10, 15, 20 different apps from 20 different companies. You're paying all these different bills. And the worst part, none of them talk to each other.
Your sales tool doesn't sync with your finance tool, which doesn't sync with your project management tool. It's just a complete mess. So in 2017, Zoho comes along and says, we have the solution. They launched Zoho One. And get this, it wasn't just another app. It was a single subscription that bundled more than 40 of their apps all together, all integrated, all in one package for one ridiculously low price.
It basically became the operating system for business. Think about that. For something like $1 a day for each employee, a small company could get literally everything they needed: sales, marketing, HR, finance, the whole shebang, all in one place, all working together perfectly. I mean, how could a competitor selling just one single tool even begin to compete with that kind of value? And all of this patient, long-term strategy of building this huge integrated suite of tools, all without any pressure from investors, it created a totally different kind of company. One with a completely different idea of what success even looks like. You can really see their entire philosophy right here. At every fork in the road, they chose the path less traveled. They prioritized long-term value over short-term growth. They chose being profitable and in control over taking VC money to scale fast. And they focused on building a whole, broad ecosystem instead of just having one single best-in-class app. So what's the payoff for playing a completely different game? Well, how about this? A private, profitable company with over 100 million users around the world. A company that pulls in over $1 billion in revenue every year. And the real kicker? They did it all without taking a single dime of outside investment. It's just incredible. So that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. You know, in the tech world, everyone's obsessed with blitzscaling, growing as fast as you can at any cost. But Zoho's story makes you wonder, right? What if being patient? What if being profitable from the start? What if that's not just the alternative path? What if it's actually the stronger one?